Nicole for Lawn Fawn, and today I have an Easter card to share with you. I've used quite a few of the different Lawn Fawn dies as well as the Happy Easter stamp set to make my card. What I'm going to do first is take some of the stamps from the Happy Easter stamp set and stamp them on some smooth white cardstock. One of the great things about this Happy Easter stamp set is it is an older release from Lawn Fawn, but they have recently come out with the coordinating dies for this set. So if you aren't a huge fussy cutter, like I don't really enjoy doing a whole lot of that, and you were hoping that Lawn Fawn would release some dies to go with the older stamp sets, you are in luck. I'm going to stamp several of these images here. I'm using Memento Tuxedo Black ink and stamping on Neenah Solar White cardstock. These are two recommended products for Copic coloring. There are others. These are just two that have worked really well for me and that I enjoy using. The Memento ink tends to not bleed, so it is a good choice for an ink when using Copic markers. I am going to use only about 2 colors per, or 2 shades per color, 3 in some cases, simply because most of these images are very small and don't require a ton of shading. I colored in the pink tulip and the base color for my leaves on the tulips, and then I skipped right over to the little chick. I am using 3 colors for him. I'm using Y11, Y08, and then YR23 for my darkest color, and I'm going to use that really sparingly, just enough to add that little bit of dimension and shading. Blend all of those out, and then I'm going to take my darkest 2 markers, the YR23 and Y08, and add a little dot detail to my little chick. I used R20 for his cheeks and then an orange for the beak. I'm going to take those 2 lighter yellow colors, the Y11 and Y08, and color in one of the tulips there, or a couple of the tulips actually, with those yellow colors. And then I'll take YG17 and add that to the leaves where I've already added YG25. I'm not even going to go back with my lighter color. I'm going to go ahead and just flick in a little bit of that for that nice variation in color. I started with a lighter purple for the one tulip there on the right and decided I didn't like the real purpley. I wanted it to be a more magenta. And I used 2 colors to begin with and then found that I really needed to add a third, so I will do that here in a little bit. I did skip over here to the bunny. I'm using W1, W00, and W3. Kind of give that illusion of a little bit of a white bunny by blending in these warm gray colors. Blended out the cheeks pretty good where I had that R20 to begin with. And I am adding a little dot detail. Now, what happened here is, as I was coloring, you can see that huge splotch of color. I overfilled my W1 marker when I was refilling it. And so I keep trying to get the excess ink out, but it's not working very well. And so what you can do is I let it dry really good. Then I took the colorless blender and tried to push that ink back inside the stamp line. This is always something I like to try, whether the colors have bled or maybe I've colored outside the lines and it's really noticeable or whatever. I try to push that ink back with the chisel tip on the colorless blender. You do not want to oversaturate the paper, however, or it will bleed even worse. So I'll kind of push that ink, then let it dry real good and move on, like I moved on and colored some Easter eggs. Grabbed my colorless blender, pushed that ink in again, moved on, colored some more somewhere else, letting that colorless blender and those inks dry really well before moving back and seeing if I can salvage the image. And in this case, I was able to save it, which was really great. So I always like to try to save it first before I decide I have to scrap it and go ahead and stamp and color another one. I am taping the coordinating dies for the Happy Easter stamp set over the images I just colored and holding them in place with a little washi tape. I've run out of Post-it tape, so I went ahead and used washi tape here. Then I'm using the solid jelly bean image from the Happy Easter stamp set and stamping it with some of the new colors of Lawn Fawn inks. And then I'll use the coordinating die over those images as well. Now I die cut all of those images, and then I am die cutting the frame for the outside of my design. This is going to frame up the whole scene. So I am using stitched rectangles from both the large and small stitched rectangle die collections, holding them in place with washi tape. This is because even though I'm using the magnetic platform, when you're using multiple dies, they tend to want to gravitate towards one another and won't always stay exactly where you put them. Now, I didn't realize I did not have my video camera on the entire time I was die cutting all the elements for this. So imagine you saw me die cutting the picket fence and the grassy border, and then that inside piece with the smaller of the two rectangles for the blue sky. And then I'm going to go ahead and put it all together. Before I add that frame, and while it's still nice and flat, I am going to take the greeting from Happy Easter, ink it up with some Lawn Fawn black licorice ink, and stamp that along the bottom edge of the frame. I'm going to stamp it slightly off center, giving me a little room in front and behind to add some of those jelly beans. Now I'm going to use my frame. I'm not going to attach it yet, but I'm going to place it on my card base so it gives me a great idea where that center panel will go. So I can line that up real well and put that in place. I'm going to remove the frame and add adhesive to my other die cut pieces. I die cut the picket fence from some wood grain cardstock to give it that nice texture. And I used both the gate piece for the picket fence plus the straight piece. And I'm going to trim that straight piece so that I can use it on each side of the gate. I don't want to stick over that center rectangle because that'll make my frame kind of wonky when I put that in place. So there is the picket fence. I'll go ahead and glue the little chick standing up here on the fence. And then I'm going to put both layers of grass along the bottom right in front of the picket fence. And then tuck in the little tulips, the bunny, and the Easter eggs all in my little grassy border. I decided I didn't want to have 6 tulips. I kind of wanted it to be more like 5. I like the odd numbers better. So I placed that one set or trio of tulips on the left side of the card and trimmed off the excess. And then I'm going to tuck my little bunny into the grass and tuck in my other tulips. I like doing the layered grass for tucking in some of the elements. I think it looks a little bit more realistic this way. Tuck in some of those Easter eggs again, place one on top. And then I decided the Easter bunny was a little too close to the edge because I really wanted that last egg to be over here on this side. So I'm going to move him over just a tiny little bit. And that looks a little bit better. One last thing is I didn't show this because I actually put the whole card together and then realized I really thought the top of the card or the scene needed a little something more. I did die cut some vellum clouds using the Spring Showers stamp set. And then I stamped, embossed, and die cut a thought bubble from the Chit Chat stamp set that'll go along the top of the card. So that's what you see there up along the top border in the finished card example. For the frame, I am placing foam adhesive around the entire back of the frame, and then I'll place that right around the center image. This just frames it up really nicely. That dimension gives it a little bit more of a framed up look. And then I will take those jelly beans and glue them in place right at the end of the greeting and place one right before the greeting. Adds a little bit of color and interest there to the bottom edge of the card. I'm using the Zig glue pen to glue those in place. I'll take the Wink of Stella clear glitter brush marker and go over the jelly beans as well as the Easter eggs. Then add those vellum clouds and the stamped and die cut thought bubble. I hope you've enjoyed this Easter card using Lawn Fawn stamps and dies. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.